The cold air of Europa's tritium mines burned Kong Day's lungs with every breath. 15 years had passed since the aliens came, and he still wasn't used to the thin atmosphere they forced humans to work in. Around him, hundreds of other workers swung their tools against the ice, digging deeper into Jupiter's frozen moon. The Velthrine overseers watched from their heated platforms above, their insect-like bodies clicking with satisfaction as humans toiled below. Kong Day had been an astrophysicist once. He remembered teaching at Seoul National University, remembered his students, remembered the day the 7 alien species appeared in Earth's sky. The Galactic Dominion, they called themselves. The Council of Superior Races. They had given humanity one choice: submit or die. Earth's military lasted 3 weeks. Now Kong Day was slave number 7,823, working 18-hour shifts in mines that would kill him in a few years. Most humans didn't last long on Europa. The work was brutal, the overseers were cruel, and hope was a luxury no one could afford. "Keep moving," a Velthrine guard clicked in its harsh, translated voice. The creature's mandibles spread wide as it gestured with a shock prod. Kong Day kept his head down and swung his tool harder. On Earth, things were no better. Park Yuna crouched in the ruins of what used to be New Seoul, her rifle clutched tight against her chest. The resistance cell she led was small, maybe 30 people, all of them exhausted and running low on supplies. Above ground, the Velthrine had transformed the city into a processing center, where humans were sorted and shipped to various alien worlds. Yuna remembered her brother. The karate had taken him 5 years ago, selling him to some wealthy alien family on the other side of the galaxy. She would never see him again. That loss had turned her grief into rage, and rage into action. Every Velthrine transport she sabotaged, every supply depot she destroyed, was for him. "We hit the convoy at dawn," she whispered to her second-in-command, a man named Beek Jin, who had been a teacher before the invasion. He nodded, checking his weapon. They both knew the odds. The resistance rarely won these days. But they fought anyway, because surrender meant forgetting. They were human. In the Velthrine command tower overlooking Asia, Li Hyan poured synthetic wine for the overseer. He wore the gray uniform of a diplomatic liaison, a polite title for personal servant. The overseer barely acknowledged him as it discussed planetary quotas with other alien administrators. Through holographic displays, Li Hyan had learned to make himself invisible. He moved quietly, spoke only when addressed, and kept his face blank. But his mind was always working. He memorized every conversation, every piece of intelligence, every weakness in the alien systems. At night, he encrypted this information and sent it through hidden channels to resistance cells across the planet. The overseer was discussing a cleansing operation. Some human settlements had refused to meet their mining quotas. The solution, according to the Velthrine, was simple: exterminate the entire population and replace them with more compliant slaves from another sector. Li Hyan's hand didn't shake as he poured more wine. He simply filed the information away and planned how to warn those settlements before the attack came. On a Brendix, factory ship orbiting Mars, Choi Nari wiped grease from her hands and stared at the alien engine she'd just repaired. She was 24 years old and had been enslaved since she was 9. The Brendix used humans to maintain their war machines, finding human hands more delicate than their own mechanical appendages. Nari had a gift for engineering. She understood systems intuitively, could see how pieces fit together, could diagnose problems the Brendix computers missed. This skill kept her alive, made her valuable, but it also gave her access. Over the years, she'd studied every aspect of Brendix technology, mapping their systems, finding their flaws. And there were flaws. For all their technological superiority, The Brendix had built their empire on a foundation that was vulnerable. Nari had found the weak points. She just needed time to figure out how to exploit them. Back on Europa, Kang Day's tool struck something that wasn't ice. The impact sent vibrations up his arms, different from the usual feel of frozen water. He glanced at the Velthrine overseers, but they were occupied with another section. Carefully, he chipped away more ice-dot metal, ancient metal, buried deep beneath Europa's surface. Kang Day's heart raced. He worked faster, exposing more of whatever lay beneath. The object was smooth, geometric, clearly manufactured. And as he cleared more ice, he saw symbols etched into its surface. Korean, Chinese, English, Arabic, languages of Earth, carved into metal that had been buried here for thousands of years. That Kang Day's hands trembled. This was impossible. Humans had only reached Europa 200 years ago, and this artifact was ancient. He kept working, clearing more of the surface, revealing what looked like a data port. Without thinking, he pulled a small scanner from his tool belt, a device the Velthrine let them use for checking ice density. He modified its frequency and connected it to the artifact data, flooded his scanner. Schematics, star charts, weapon designs, and a message repeating in every Earth language. You are not what they think you are. You are not what you think you are. Remember, awaken, survive. A shock prod slammed into Kang Day's back, and he collapsed. The Velthrine overseer stood above him, mandibles clicking angrily. No unauthorized breaks. Back to work. Kang Day nodded, gasping, but he'd already copied the data. As he stood and returned to his position, his mind raced. That artifact changed everything. It meant humanity had a history they didn't know about, a past that had been hidden or forgotten. That night, in the slave quarters, Kang Day used a smuggled transmitter to send encrypted fragments of his discovery to every resistance cell he could reach. The message was simple. Found something. Changes everything. Humanity is older than we know. Park Yuna received the message in her bunker beneath New Seoul. She read it 3 times, trying to understand. Beek Jin looked over her shoulder, equally confused. What does it mean? He asked. I don't know, Yuna admitted. But if there's something about us the aliens don't know, something we don't know about ourselves, we need to find out what it is. Li Hyan received the same message in the Velthrine Tower. He deleted it immediately after reading, but the words stayed in his mind. Choi Nari got the message on the Brendix factory ship and began cross-referencing the schematics against alien technology she'd studied across the galaxy. In mines and factories and slave camps, humans whispered about the discovery. The aliens noticed nothing. They were too confident in their control, too certain that humanity was primitive and broken. But something had begun, something the Galactic Dominion couldn't see. Deep in Europa's ice, an ancient secret had been unearthed, and humanity, enslaved and scattered across the stars, began to remember that they were more than victims. They just didn't know how much more. Not yet. Choi Nari worked through the night, her eyes burning from exhaustion. The data Kang Day had sent was encrypted in a way she'd never seen before, but somehow she understood it. The code felt familiar, like remembering a language she'd spoken as a child. After 6 hours, the files opened. What she found made her hands shake. The schematics showed technology that was human in origin, but far beyond anything modern Earth had created. Ships that could fold space, weapons that manipulated gravity, energy shields that adapted to any attack. And buried in the data was a historical record that rewrote everything humans thought they knew about themselves. Humanity had been a spacefaring civilization thousands of years ago. They had explored the galaxy, built colonies, fought wars. Then something happened, something the records called the Great Regression. Humanity had deliberately destroyed most of their technology, erased their own history, and returned to Earth. The record said humanity chose to forget, to start over, to lock away their potential until it was needed again. Nari encrypted her findings and sent them to every resistance cell she could reach. Then she began studying the weapon designs, comparing them to the Brendic systems she maintained every day. A smile crossed her face. The ancient human weapons were designed to counter every alien technology in the Galactic Dominion. It was as if humanity had fought these species before. On Earth, Park Yuna gathered her resistance cell in their underground bunker. 30 faces looked back at her, all of them exhausted, all of them waiting for hope. She projected Nari's decoded files onto the wall. "This changes everything," she said. "We're not who we thought we were. Our ancestors were warriors, explorers, conquerors. They chose to forget, but the knowledge is still there, locked in our DNA, waiting. How does that help us now?" Someone asked. "We're still slaves. We still have shock collars and alien weapons pointed at us." Yuna pulled up another section of the data. "Because the records say the genetic locks can be broken. Stress, danger, necessity, these things can trigger our dormant abilities. We can become what we used to be." Beek Jin stood beside her. "We need to test this. We need to know if it's real." They started small. Following instructions buried in the ancient files, they put volunteers through extreme physical and mental challenges. Meditation techniques that seemed to rewire neural pathways. Training exercises that pushed bodies beyond normal limits. For weeks, nothing happened. Then everything changed. A resistance fighter named Han Te was the first. He'd been a slave soldier in the Vexian military, forced to fight in their wars. During a training session, something in him snapped. He moved faster than human eyes could follow, dodged attacks before they came, hit targets with impossible accuracy. When they tested his strength, he lifted equipment that should have required 3 men. Han Te looked at his hands in amazement. "I can feel it," he said. "It's like something sleeping inside me just woke up." Others followed. Kim Sora, who had been enslaved in Illiran energy farms, discovered she could sense and manipulate energy fields. When an Illiran tried to drain her bioelectricity, she absorbed the attack and redirected it, leaving the alien unconscious. She stared at her glowing hands in shock. "I didn't think," she said. "I just knew what to do." The awakening spread. Across Earth and on distant worlds, humans began changing. Their bodies adapted faster, healed quicker, grew stronger. Their minds processed information at accelerated rates. And strangest of all, humans started sharing thoughts during moments of crisis, as if their consciousness could link together when needed. Li Haiyan noticed it during his service in the Velthrine Tower. He was pouring wine when he suddenly knew the overseer was about to order an execution. He didn't hear it or see any signal, he just knew. Acting on instinct, he spilled wine on the overseer's console, creating enough distraction that the order was delayed. Later, he learned that delay had given resistance fighters time to evacuate a target area. The abilities were subtle at first, easy to hide from the aliens. But they were growing stronger every day. Park Yuna decided it was time to act. They had intelligence about a Velthrine processing facility where 10,000 humans were being held before transport to slave markets. A month ago, attacking such a facility would have been suicide. Now, with their awakening abilities, they had a chance. The raid happened at midnight. Yuna led 50 fighters against a facility guarded by 300 Velthrine soldiers and automated defenses. It should have been a massacre. Instead, the humans moved like ghosts. They anticipated the aliens' movements, countered their tactics, adapted to their weapons in real time. Han Te led a squad that moved so fast the security cameras couldn't track them. Kim Sora disrupted the facility's power grid with nothing but her touch. Other fighters displayed abilities they didn't know they had, predicting attacks, hacking alien systems with their minds, coordinating without speaking. The battle lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, the facility was in human hands. All 10,000 captives were freed, and the Resistance had captured Velthrine technology intact. Most shocking of all, they'd only lost 3 fighters. Eunice stood in the facility's command center, looking at displays that showed alien communications across the planet. They were panicking. The Velthrine couldn't understand what had happened. Humans weren't supposed to be capable of this. "Send a message," she told Beat Jin. "Tell every Resistance cell what we did. Tell them it's possible. Tell them to wake up." On Europa, Kong Dai continued his work in the mines while secretly studying the artifact. He'd managed to extract more data, including training protocols that would accelerate human awakening. He sent these files through hidden networks, spreading the knowledge as far as he could, but the Brendix were monitoring data transmissions. They detected unusual patterns and traced them back to Europa. When Kong Dai returned to the mines the next day, Brendix security forces were waiting. They took him to an interrogation facility on Ganymede. The Brendix wanted to know about the artifact, about the data, about everything. When Kong Dai refused to talk, they began torturing him. Pain beyond anything he'd experienced tore through his body. Electric shocks, chemical burns, neural agony. The Brendix were efficient torturers, and they had no mercy for rebellious slaves. But pain was exactly what Kong Dai's dormant genetics needed to fully awaken Dot. It happened suddenly. One moment he was screaming in agony, the next his mind expanded. He could sense every system in the facility, every weakness, every vulnerability. His body adapted in real time, developing immunity to the torture methods. His strength increased exponentially, the restraints holding him shattered. Kong Dai stood, and the Brendix guards opened fire. He moved, and the bullets seemed slow. He touched a control panel, and the entire facility's systems obeyed him as if they were extensions of his own body. What happened next was brutal and efficient. Kong Dai fought his way out of the facility, and nothing the Brendix threw at him made any difference. He adapted to every weapon, countered every tactic. By the time he stole a shuttle and escaped, 50 Brendix guards were dead, and their interrogation facility was a smoking ruin. News of the escape spread across alien networks. The Galactic Dominion held an emergency session. Some species wanted to dismiss it as an isolated incident. Others weren't so sure. "Humans are evolving," a Morthic representative said. "They're becoming something we didn't anticipate." "Impossible," the Velthrine Queen replied. "We've studied their biology. They're primitive. What we're seeing is probably enhanced technology, stolen from our own systems." But privately, the aliens were worried. Humans were changing in ways their science couldn't explain. The Council of Superior Races began planning a cleansing operation. If humans couldn't be controlled, they would be eliminated. Li Haiyan heard these plans and transmitted them immediately. Across the galaxy, humans received the warning. The aliens were coming to kill them all, but this time, humanity wasn't afraid. Kong Dai's escape had proven what they could become. Yuna's successful raid showed they could fight and win. The ancient knowledge spreading through Resistance. Networks was unlocking abilities the aliens never imagined humans possessed. In slave camps and mines and factories, humans stopped pretending to be weak. They looked at their overseers with new eyes. They felt the power waking inside them, felt the connections to each other growing stronger. The Galactic Dominion had enslaved humanity, thinking they were conquering primitives. Instead, they had awakened something ancient and powerful, something that had chosen to sleep, but now remembered why it was dangerous. Humanity was done being victims. The real war was about to begin, the Galactic Dominion sent their elite forces to Earth, 3 massive fleets, carrying the combined military might of the Morphic Collective and Velthrine Empire, jumped into orbit above the planet. Their mission was simple: crush the human resistance once and for all. Park Una stood on the roof of a building in New Sol, watching the alien ships descend through the atmosphere. Around her, the resistance had transformed the city into a fortress. Walls of reinforced concrete, weapon emplacements cobbled together from stolen alien technology, and thousands of awakened humans ready to fight. "They think this will be easy," Beekjin said, standing beside her. "They still don't understand what we've become." Una checked her weapon, a rifle modified with technology from the ancient human files. "Good. Let them underestimate us one more time." The attack began at dawn. Velthrine dropships landed in the outer districts, deploying thousands of insectoid soldiers. Morphic war machines rolled through the streets, their silicon-based bodies impervious to conventional weapons. Above, alien fighters screamed through the sky, raining plasma fire on human positions. It should have been a slaughter. The aliens had superior numbers, better weapons, and air superiority. Every tactical analysis said humanity would be crushed within hours, but the analysis was based on what humans used to be, not what they had become. The first wave of Velthrine soldiers charged into the city and met Hante's defensive line. Hante had been training freed slave soldiers for weeks, teaching them to access their awakened abilities. Now 50 humans faced 500 aliens, and the aliens broke first. The humans moved with impossible coordination, every fighter connected through their emerging collective consciousness. They knew where attacks would come from before they happened. They dodged plasma fire, moved between enemy positions like ghosts, and struck with precision that seemed superhuman. Because it was superhuman. These weren't the weak primitives the aliens remembered. These were humans who had unlocked genetic potential that had been sleeping for thousands of years. A Velthrine officer watched his soldiers fall and couldn't understand it. His troops were elite warriors, veterans of 100 campaigns. But they were dying, torn apart by humans who fought with a ferocity and skill that shouldn't exist. "Fall back," he ordered. "Regroup and call for artillery support." But falling back meant turning their backs on Hante's forces. The retreat became a rout. Within an hour, the entire Velthrine first wave was destroyed. Above the city, Kim Sora stood at a power station the resistance had captured. She placed her hands on the main generator and felt the energy flowing through it. Since her awakening, she'd discovered she could sense and manipulate all forms of energy. Now she was going to use that ability to change the battle. She closed her eyes and reached out, feeling the energy fields across the city. The alien ships above pulsed with power signatures she could read like books. Their shields, their weapons, their engines, all of it ran on energy she could touch. With effort that made her nose bleed, Kim Sora disrupted the energy shields of an entire squadron of alien fighters. For just 3 seconds, those shields failed. 3 seconds was enough. Human anti-aircraft batteries, using weapons reverse-engineered from captured technology, tore the unshielded fighters apart. 12 alien craft fell from the sky in flames. On the ground, Choi Nari worked in a makeshift workshop, modifying weapons and equipment. She'd barely slept in days, driven by a clarity of purpose that came from her awakened mind. The ancient human files had shown her exactly how to exploit weaknesses in alien technology. She handed a modified device to a runner. "Get this to the front line. It'll disrupt morphic neural networks. They'll shut down completely." The runner took the device and sprinted toward the fighting. Nari turned back to her workbench, already designing the next weapon. Ideas flowed through her mind faster than she could implement them. As if thousands of years of suppressed engineering knowledge was flooding back all at once. The Morthic war machines pushed deeper into the city, crushing barricades and demolishing buildings. Then human fighters deployed Nari's devices, and the machines simply stopped. Their silicon-based consciousness networks crashed, leaving them as inert as statues. Human soldiers swarmed over the disabled machines, taking them apart, learning their systems, adapting the technology for their own use. In orbit, the alien commanders watched in disbelief. This wasn't how the battle was supposed to go. They sent more troops, more machines, more firepower, and humanity adapted to all of it. Across the planet, similar scenes played out. In Beijing, humans used ancient tactical knowledge to turn alien siege weapons against their creators. In Cairo, awakened fighters moved through the ruins like predators, hunting the hunters. In Snow Paulo, resistance cells demonstrated abilities the aliens had never encountered. Humans who could interface directly with technology, who could predict attacks through emerging psychic connections, who adapted to injuries and environmental hazards in real time. The fighting lasted 3 days. When it ended, New Sol stood intact. The Velthrine and Morthic forces had been annihilated. Their commanders stared at casualty reports they couldn't believe. They'd lost 12,000 soldiers and hundreds of war machines. Human casualties were minimal. Park Eunice stood in the ruins of a Velthrine command post, reading their communications. The aliens were terrified. For the first time since they'd conquered Earth, they understood they might lose. "It's not enough," she said to Beek Jin. "Winning one battle won't free us. We need to take the war to them." She was right. On other worlds, humans enslaved by different alien species watched news of Earth's victory and found hope. If humanity could win on Earth, maybe they could win everywhere. On Titan, thousands of humans worked in karate mining operations. When they heard about New Sol, they stopped working. The karate overseers ordered them back to their duties. The humans refused. A karate supervisor raised a shock prod. A human miner named Lee Mina caught the supervisor's arm. She'd been a slave for 10 years, and in that moment, something inside her awakened. Her grip crushed the alien's limb like paper. "No more," she said simply. The uprising on Titan took 6 hours. When it was over, the karate were dead or fleeing, and humans controlled the mining facilities. They sent a message to Earth: "We're free. What do we do now?" Similar revolts erupted across the galaxy. On the Morthic agricultural worlds, enslaved humans poisoned the entire planetary food supply, crippling the collective's ability to feed their population. On Brendik's factory stations, Choi Nari's sabotage techniques spread among human workers who turned the aliens' own machines into weapons. Most dramatic was what happened in the Vexian military. Han Te had been a slave soldier, and he knew thousands of other humans serving in alien armies. He sent them a simple message: remember who you are. Remember who enslaved you. Fight back. During a major Vexian campaign against a rival species, 50,000 human soldiers turned on their commanders mid-battle. The betrayal was complete and devastating. The Vexian military, which had relied on human troops for ground operations, collapsed in a single day. The Galactic Dominion's Council held emergency sessions. 3 of their 7 species had lost entire military divisions to human uprisings. The Illurin reported that humans had developed the ability to drain and redirect their energy, essentially turning the Illurin's own feeding mechanism against them. The Brendik's production capacity had dropped to 0 as human workers sabotaged everything they touched. The Council made a decision born of desperation. If they couldn't control humanity, they would eliminate it completely. They authorized the use of planet-killer weapons. Li Haiyan was serving wine when he heard the order. He kept his face neutral, poured drinks for the Velthrine commanders, discussing which human worlds to destroy first. Earth would be last, they decided. Make humanity watch as every colony, every outpost, every concentration of human life was annihilated. That night, Hyan transmitted the plan to Earth. The message reached Park Yuna at her command post in New Seoul. She read it twice, feeling her blood run cold. The aliens were preparing to commit genocide on a galactic scale. Humanity had 72 hours before the first planet killer. Weapons fired. Yuna called an emergency meeting of resistance leaders across the globe. Faces appeared on screens: commanders from every continent, representatives from freed colonies, and Kang Dae, who had become the voice of awakened humanity. "They're going to kill us all," Yuna said. "Every human in the galaxy. We have 3 days. Then we have 3 days to hit them so hard they never recover," Kang Dae replied. His eyes glowed with something that wasn't quite human anymore. His full awakening had changed him, made him more than he used to be. "I've decoded the final sections of the artifact data. Our ancestors left us something." He transmitted files that made everyone in the meeting go silent. Weapons, ships, technology that made the Galactic Dominion's military look primitive. "Where?" Yuna asked. "Hidden across the solar system. Our ancestors buried them, waiting for the day we'd need them again." Kang Dae smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. "That day is now. The aliens wanted to kill us. Instead, they're about to learn what happens when you wake up a sleeping giant." The ships emerged from beneath Mars, like ancient gods waking from sleep. Massive dreadnoughts that had been buried for millennia rose through the red sand, their hulls activating, their systems coming online after thousands of years of dormancy. They were beautiful and terrifying, designed by a humanity that had once ruled the stars. Park Yuna stood on the bridge of the flagship, a vessel the ancient humans had named Indomitable Spirit. The command systems interfaced directly with her mind, responding to her thoughts as if the ship was an extension of her body. Around her, other awakened humans took their positions, and the ship recognized them, welcomed them home. "How is this possible?" asked a technician, staring at displays that showed star charts from before recorded history. "Our ancestors built these ships to last forever," Kang Dae said. He stood at the tactical station, his awakened mind processing information faster than any computer. They knew that someday humanity might need them again. They were right. More ships appeared across the solar system. Stealth carriers hidden in the asteroid belt powered up, their cloaking systems still functional after eons. Weapons platforms disguised as Jupiter's moons activated, revealing arsenals that could crack planets. And in Earth's core, something massive stirred. A defense system so powerful it had been buried deeper than anything else. The human fleet assembled in space, above Earth. 50 capital ships, 200 carriers, 1,000 smaller craft. Every vessel was crewed by awakened humans whose genetic memories taught them how to operate. Technology their ancestors had. Built. Han Tae sat in the cockpit of a fighter, craft that seemed to respond to his thoughts before he had them. Around him, other pilots were having the same experience. These ships were designed for awakened humans, built to enhance their abilities rather than limit them. "This is impossible," one pilot whispered. "We were slaves 3 months ago. Now we're flying warships from a civilization we didn't know existed." "We always existed," Han Tae replied. "We just forgot. Now we remember." The Galactic Dominion's extermination fleet jumped into Earth orbit right on schedule. 300 warships from all 7 alien species, carrying enough firepower to sterilize the planet. Their commanders expected to find a defenseless world, desperate humans begging for mercy. Instead, they found themselves facing a fleet that outgunned them 3-1. The alien admiral stared at his displays in shock. "What is this? Where did these ships come from?" His tactical officer couldn't answer. The sensors showed vessels using technology the Dominion had never seen, energy signatures that didn't match any known civilization. And then the human fleet opened fire. The battle lasted 4 hours. It was brutal, efficient, and completely one-sided. Human ships phased in and out of normal space, making them impossible to target. Their weapons tore through alien shields as if they didn't exist. And the human crews fought with a coordination that seemed telepathic, because it was their awakened minds linked together, turning the entire fleet into a single organism. Park Yuna commanded the flagship with calm precision. She could feel every ship in the fleet, sense their status, anticipate their needs. When 3 Velthrine cruisers tried to flank her position, she knew it before they completed the maneuver. Her counterattack destroyed all 3 ships in minutes. Kim Sora worked in the flagship's power systems, managing energy distribution across the vessel. But her awakened abilities let her do more than that. She reached out to the enemy ships, disrupting their power grids, causing cascading failures. Alien vessels went dark, their crews screaming as life support failed. Choi Nari led engineering teams that performed miracles, keeping ancient ships running at peak efficiency while also modifying systems in real time. She improved the ancient designs, making them even more effective. Her awakened mind saw connections and solutions that would have taken normal engineers years to develop. Han Te's fighter squadron moved through the battle like a swarm of predators. They were outnumbered, but it didn't matter. The pilots fought with abilities that made them nearly impossible to kill. They dodged attacks that should have been unavoidable, hit targets at impossible ranges, and coordinated their movements with inhuman precision. When the battle ended, the Galactic Dominion's extermination fleet was destroyed. 300 warships reduced to debris. The few alien survivors fled in escape pods, traumatized by what they'd witnessed. But humanity didn't celebrate. They weren't done. Set course for the Velthrine home worlds, Yuna ordered. It's time to show them what happens when you enslave the wrong species. The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, and the galaxy trembled. The Velthrine hive worlds were a system of 6 planets, all of them transformed into massive breeding grounds for the insectoid race. Billions of Velthrine lived there, confident in their security. They had ruled this sector for 10,000 years. Nothing had ever threatened their home. Then the human fleet arrived. Han Te led the fighter assault on the primary breeding chambers. His squadrons moved faster than the Velthrine defenses could track, dodging automated weapons and destroying critical infrastructure. The breeding chambers, where new Velthrine were grown in massive organic vats, went up in flames. The Velthrine queen, watching from her palace, felt terror for the first time in her long life. These humans moved like nothing she'd ever seen. They fought with a savagery that her species, for all their military power, couldn't match. Surrender, came a message from the human flagship. Surrender or watch your species burn. The queen had no choice. She transmitted her submission, and the human fleet withdrew. But the damage was done. The Velthrine breeding capacity was crippled. It would take generations for them to recover. Morthic Prime fell next. The silicon-based collective had thought themselves safe, their planet's extreme radiation levels making it uninhabitable for most organic life. But humans adapted. Troops in advanced armor stormed the crystalline cities, and Kim Sora used her energy, manipulation abilities to shatter the central consciousness nodes that controlled the collective. Without their central coordination, the Morthic civilization ground to a halt. The Karate Trading Nexus was a massive space station where the amphibious traders conducted business across the galaxy. It was also where they sold human slaves. Beat Jin, who had been a teacher before the invasion, now commanded assault force that boarded the station. He broadcast the Karathi's crimes across the galactic network before ordering orbital bombardment. The Nexus, a structure that had existed for 8,000 years, was reduced to rubble in hours. Choi Nari personally led the assault on the Brendix manufacturing worlds. She knew their systems better than they did, having maintained them as a slave. Now she turned that knowledge into a weapon. The Brendix watched in horror as their own machines turned against them, following commands from the human engineer who had learned their secrets. Production facilities exploded. Assembly lines tore themselves apart. The Brendix economy, built on automated manufacturing, collapsed in a single day. The Illyran, beings of pure energy, tried to flee when the human fleet approached their dimension. But Kim Sora had developed technology specifically to hunt them. She drained their energy, leaving them powerless, trapping them in containment fields where they couldn't harm anyone again. The Vexian clans, warlike reptilians who had used humans as cannon fodder, faced Hante's wrath personally. He landed on their capital world with 10,000 soldiers, all of them former slaves who had fought in Vexian armies. They knew every Vexian tactic, every weakness. The battle was personal and brutal. When it ended, the Vexian warlords, beings who had never bowed to anyone, knelt before Hante and begged for mercy. The Avring, crystalline beings who had experimented on humans, found their research stations boarded by Kang Day himself. He walked through their laboratories, seeing the horrors they'd inflicted on his people. The Avrian scientists tried to explain, to justify their actions as necessary research. Kang Day destroyed their stations one by one, ensuring none of their cruel research survived. In 3 weeks, the human fleet had struck at the heart of all 7 alien species. The Galactic Dominion's empire didn't just crack, it shattered. Without military power, without economic stability, without the confidence that had made them rulers, the alien species descended into chaos, other enslaved species, seeing humanity's impossible victory, rose up against their own oppressors. The galaxy erupted in rebellion. Empires that had stood for millennia fell in days. On Earth, Li Haiyan watched the Velthrine commanders receive reports of their collapsing empire. The overseer who had ruled Asia looked at him with new eyes, suddenly seeing not a servant but a threat. "What have you done?" The overseer whispered. Haiyan smiled. "We stopped being victims. We remembered who we are." The remaining alien leadership realized their situation. They couldn't fight humanity. Every battle proved that. Their only choice was surrender or extinction. One by one, the 7 species sent messages to Earth. They would come. They would negotiate. They would beg for mercy from the species they had enslaved. The first ship arrived on a Tuesday morning. A small Velthrine vessel, damaged and listing, requested permission to land at what used to be New Sol. Proud insectoid empire that had once demanded humanity's submission now came with white flags and trembling MBIBLEs. Park. Yuna stood in the landing area, watching the ship descend. Around her, human soldiers kept their weapons ready. The war might be over, but trust was something that would take longer to rebuild. The Velthrine queen emerged from the ship, her once magnificent carapace scarred and broken. She walked slowly, painfully, toward the waiting humans. When she reached Yuna, she did something no Velthrine ruler had done in 10,000 years. She lowered herself to the ground in complete submission. "We beg for mercy," the queen said, her translated voice barely above a whisper. "We were wrong. We were arrogant. We thought you were weak, but we didn't understand. Please, spare what remains of my people." More ships followed over the next weeks. The Morthic Collective sent representatives whose silicon bodies flickered with uncertainty. The karate trade princes arrived in vessels that were barely spaceworthy. The Brendix shut down their last remaining weapons factories and came with nothing but desperate pleas. The Illyran, reduced to a fraction of their former power, offered their energy to power Earth cities as tribute. The Vexian warlords, who had built their culture on strength and dominance, bent their knees and accepted whatever judgment humanity would pass. The Averine opened their research libraries, sharing millennia of knowledge they had hoarded. Earth established the human tribunal in the ruins of a former slave processing center. The symbolism was deliberate alien representatives would stand where they had once sorted humans like cargo. Li Haiyan served as chief diplomat. A quiet man who had pretended to be a servant now spoke for humanity. He looked at the assembled aliens with eyes that held no hatred, but no forgiveness either. "You came to our world thinking you were superior," he said. "You took our people, worked them to death, sold them like animals. You never asked if we wanted your rule. You simply took what you wanted because you could." The alien representatives said nothing. What defense could they offer? Park Yuna represented the resistance fighters, those who had never stopped struggling, even when hope seemed impossible. She stood before the assembly with the scars of 15 years of fighting visible on her body. "You destroyed families," she said. "You murdered children. You erased entire communities. And you did it without thought, without mercy, because you believed we didn't matter." Kang Day spoke for all those who had suffered in mines and factories and laboratories across the galaxy. His voice was calm, but something in his eyes made the aliens flinch. "We could do to you what you did to us," he said. "We have the power now. We could enslave your species, work you to death, see how you like being treated as less than sentient." The aliens trembled. They knew it was true. Humanity had proven their military superiority. If humans wanted revenge, nothing could stop them. Beat Jin, the former teacher who had become a resistance leader, stood last. He looked at the aliens with something like pity. "But we won't," he said. "Not because you deserve mercy. You don't, but because we refuse to become what you were." The human leaders debated for months. The entire planet watched, arguing about what justice should look like. Some demanded total extermination. Others wanted the aliens enslaved so they could experience what they'd inflicted. Many called for trials and punishment. A few advocated for cautious peace. The arguments were heated, painful, and necessary. Humanity had to decide what kind of civilization they wanted to be. Finally, the verdict came. Li Haiyan read it to the assembled alien representatives. "The 7 species of the Galactic Dominion are found guilty of crimes against humanity. The punishment is as follows. First, reparations. You will rebuild what you destroyed. You will provide resources for Earth's expansion across the galaxy. You will work until every human who suffered has been compensated. Second, disarmament. All offensive military capabilities will be dismantled under human supervision. You will maintain only enough force to defend yourselves, nothing more. Third, education. The truth of what happened here will be taught on every alien world. Your children will know what your generation did, and they will know why it was wrong. Fourth, restrictions. No alien species may enter human space without explicit permission for 1,000 years. You will respect our boundaries and our autonomy. Fifth, service. Each species will send representatives to live on Earth, ensuring compliance with these terms. They will serve as a reminder of what happens when the strong abuse the weak. The aliens bowed their heads, accepting the terms. They had expected much worse. But most importantly, Haiyan continued, we choose to show mercy. Not because you deserve it, but because we are better than you. We will not exterminate you. We will not enslave you. We will give you the chance to become something worthy of the galaxy you tried to rule. The Velthrine Queen wept, a sight never before witnessed by her species. The Morthic collective's consciousness flickered with emotions their kind rarely experienced. The proud Vexian warlords stood in shocked silence, unable to comprehend such generosity from those they had oppressed. The rebuilding began immediately. Kim Sora led human teens to the Illyran home dimension, teaching them how to sustain themselves without draining other species. She worked alongside Illyran scientists who had once experimented on her people, showing them a better way. Choi Nari traveled to the Brendix worlds, helping them rebuild their shattered infrastructure. She shared human innovations freely, improving their technology while ensuring it could never be used for conquest again. Han Tay established a peacekeeping force drawn from all species. He trained humans and aliens together, teaching them to see each other as equals rather than masters and slaves. Former Vexian soldiers who had once forced humans to fight now trained beside those same humans as brothers. Beak Jin created educational programs that would be taught across the galaxy. Future generations would learn about the Galactic Dominion's crimes, but also about humanity's choice to show mercy. The lessons became the foundation for a new galactic civilization. Years passed. The scars began to heal, though they would never completely disappear. Earth became the center of a new galactic community, one based on cooperation rather than domination. One day, Kangde returned to Europa. The moon was now a free world, its mines operated by volunteers who were well paid and well treated. He walked to the site where he'd first discovered the ancient artifact, the discovery that had changed everything. Park. Yuna joined him there. She'd left the military to work in diplomacy, helping forge alliances with former enemies. They stood together in silence, looking at the memorial that had been built on the spot. "Do you ever wonder if we made the right choice?" Yuna asked. "Showing mercy instead of taking revenge?" Kang Day was quiet for a long moment, watching Earth rise over Europa's horizon. The planet glowed with city lights, thriving and free. "Our ancestors were powerful enough to conquer the galaxy," he said. "They chose to hide that power because they understood what unlimited strength could do. They knew that true civilizations are built on compassion, not conquest." "The aliens enslaved us thinking we were weak," Yuna said. "Yes, and in doing so, they reminded us what we really are." Kang Day smiled. "Not conquerors, not victims, human. And that's more powerful than any weapon we could build." They stood together, watching as ships from a dozen different species passed overhead. Former enemies now working together, building something new. The galaxy had changed, and humanity had been the catalyst. In homes across Earth and beyond, human parents told their children the story of the 15 years of slavery and the war that followed. They told them about the moment humanity remembered its strength, and they told them about the choice that defined them, the moment when humanity could have chosen vengeance, but chose mercy instead. On the Velthrine home world, young insectoids learned about the human tribunal and the queen who had begged for forgiveness. On Morthic Prime, new generations studied the species who had defeated them and then helped rebuild. On every world, in every school, the same lesson was taught: strength without wisdom leads to destruction, but mercy without justice leads nowhere. Humanity had proven they could fight. They'd shown the galaxy what happened when you awakened a sleeping giant. But more importantly, they'd demonstrated something the Galactic Dominion had never understood. True power isn't the ability to destroy your enemies. It's the wisdom to know when not to. The 7 species that tried to enslave Earth became humanity's staunchest defenders, having learned the hardest lesson in the galaxy. They had treated humans as slaves and been shown mercy in return. That mercy taught them more about civilization than 10,000 years of conquest ever had. And across the stars, in schools and homes and gathering places, beings of every species shared one truth: humanity had saved the galaxy not by defeating their enemies, but by showing them a better way to exist. The age of empires and slavery was over. A new era had begun, built on the foundation of one species' choice to forgive when they could have destroyed. Earth stood at the center of this new civilization, not as conquerors, but as guardians who had learned from their ancestors' mistakes. Humanity remembered what they were capable of. They remembered their strength, their potential, their power. But most importantly, they remembered their compassion. And that made all the difference.